Stand up.
From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominick. On today's episode, tips on navigating that difficult conversation with Grandma about spreading around her herpes.
Oh, my God.
And now, the podcast host who always maintains his boundaries, especially when it comes to communicable diseases, Pete Dominick.
Yes, you see me. You always see me, Pete Co., and I do. I try to maintain my boundaries when it comes to several things, not just communicable diseases, but no boundaries with you, my friend. That is for sure. I, however, did miss you at our hangout yesterday as we watched a soccer game together, Pete Co. Curse you. What, were you working or something? Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 731 of Stand Up. I've got an excellent episode for you today. Joining me today, I outdid myself. Great conversation with Bill Boyle, Bill B in D.C., as always. And before that, I sat down with Dr. Jason Johnson on today's show, and he and I haven't talked in a long time. We covered a lot of ground. I think you're going to enjoy, be enlightened by, informed by, even entertained at times by my conversations with both Bill Boyle and Dr. Jason Johnson on today's episode of Stand Up. So I've got about 15 minutes of talking here, some news, stories, and sound to play for you, setting up my conversations then with Dr. Jason Johnson, which starts 21 minutes, and Bill B and I start about 54 minutes. If you want to fast forward to either of those. This is an independent media outlet. I do almost no advertising. Actually, right now I have no contracts with any advertisers. And today is an ad-free episode. Most episodes are ad-free, but I can't do it without you. So if you haven't signed up for a paid subscription, now would be a great day because it's the last day of the month and the best day to sign up for a paid subscription to this podcast. Go to standupwithpete.com right now to support this currently ad-free podcast where I get the smartest, bestest people in the world to talk to me about the most important and impactful issues in your community, country, planet, and in your life, on your journey through this life, hurtling across space on this giant ball along with me. I can't do it without you. Please sign up for a subscription right now. Standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominick. I would love to end the year back up over 800 subscribers, and right now we're somewhere around 740. And that scares me and makes me think that I can't sustain this. So please, at some point, go to standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominick and sign up for a paid subscription as little as $5 a month. You can always pay more, which so many of you do, and I am so grateful for it. I'm also I just hired an intern, and I'm going to have a paid intern. I'm very excited, and she is a camp friend of my daughter's and a sophomore, I think, at University of Wisconsin Whitewater, and I'll introduce you to her in maybe a couple of weeks, definitely next year or sometime in January. So that is going to be a really smart investment I'm looking forward to. Might take out an ad for the show, because it's all about promoting the show. I think what I'm doing here is excellent. I think it's an excellent public interest project, and you can't beat the quality of guests and the variety and types and frequency of these great names who I like to think I host a pretty good conversation with, and who my career has afforded access to and relationship building with. And best of all, we've created this amazing, supportive, kind, thoughtful, generous community along with it that has created so much support and friendship and comfort for so many of you that I hear from all the time. It's just a matter of getting the word out, and you can do it on social media, which is awesome, except for my main tool has been Twitter, and the fact that so many of these great guests I get post there that they join me here on the show, and it's always been a great kind of grassroots, organic, and authentic way to promote such a project, such a show like mine. So if that goes down, I'm going to have an even harder time promoting. So got to find ways to spread the word and promote the show, get on other podcasts myself, which is something, of course, I'm working on doing. All kinds of different ways to support me and the show. If you want to be part of our street team, we'd love to have you. Email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. and you can join our next street team meeting. And also just wanted to promote the fact that I got Kenneth C. Davis joining us on the Thursday night hangout. I invited him to hang out with us this Thursday night, 8 o'clock East. I host a hangout every Thursday night, always a party. We have a great time out in the shed. Over 50 listeners, subscribers usually show up, probably more, whenever I tell you that there's going to be a guest there. You can ask him questions. Kenneth C. Davis of don'tknowmuch.com, his new book about great short books is so good. A year of reading briefly great short books. Kenneth C. Davis will be our guest on the Thursday night hangout. So come see him and say hello to him and thank him for joining me, and we'll have a great conversation where you can ask him questions. If you got questions, let me know, and I'll get you on with him on Thursday night at 8 p.m. East. Got to be a subscriber. You'll get an email link, and we'll see you there. All right, I'm feeling good. I'm getting back to the gym and exercising, eating well, taking vitamin D, trying to do no beer December, or very little beer at least. And I am getting ready to party all the way up to the shortest day of the year, and then start getting excited as the daylight starts to come back. Can you believe it? It is day 679 of the Biden presidency. There are 707 days until the next presidential election, in case anybody's wondering. There are 26 days until Christmas, if you're into that kind of thing. By the way, I've asked my family to get me a nice bathrobe, nice hooded bathrobe, something with like a fleece, very warm lining. I'd like my name on the back, the number 1, my jersey number in high school sports. And then in the front, they can write whatever name, whatever nickname they think I should have on the robe. And then I'm going to turn that robe into a more sophisticated thing that I can wear throughout the day, because we don't really use a lot of heat in our home here. And I support that idea. I think it's kind of a waste. I don't mind dressing warmer. Okay. I'm Jimmy Carter's ideal demographic. I'm for that. But this year I'm going to need a robe. I'm going to need a robe. I don't want to be cold. And so that is what I've asked for Christmas. If there is a really warm, long robe that you like, that you'd like to recommend, by all means, let me know. I'm looking at the LL Bean robes right now. Am I boring you? All right, let's get to it. Yesterday was a crazy busy day in news, and we all took a break from it, or several of us did, and I hosted a hangout for listeners, subscribers to watch the World Cup, watch the U.S. beat Iran. Superstar American player Christian Pulisic, who scored a goal and looked like he lost a testicle at the same time, did not come back for the second half, but he will be there on Saturday, and so will I, hosting another hangout, 9 a.m. this Saturday, where the U.S. will take on the Netherlands in the knockout rounds, as they are calling them. And in other news, yesterday, like I said, busy news day. The Senate passed the Respect for Marriage Act to codify federal protections for same-sex and interracial marriages. Congressional leaders also vowed to pass legislation, quote, ASAP, to avert a nationwide rail strike, which is a really interesting and scary situation, and very interesting to dig into the details around that. A federal jury convicted Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes of seditious conspiracy, which is awesome. Also, Mark Meadows, Trump's final and most controversial chief of staff there during, of course, the January 6th insurrection, sitting on his hands, not knowing what to do, shit in his pants. He was ordered to testify to the grand jury investigating Trump's effort to overturn the election in Georgia. So that's a pretty big deal. And finally, Kevin McCarthy disavowed the white nationalist Nick Fuentes, but declined to criticize Trump for having dinner with him. And of course, he got kind of tripped up because he was talking about how bad Nick Fuentes was, but he forgot that Kanye was also horribly anti-Semitic, which is why he's been hanging out with Nick Fuentes. And McCarthy's like, no, he invited Kanye, not Nick Fuentes. And reporters are like, what's the difference? They're both horrible anti-Semites and have been going around spreading these awful, dangerous conspiracy theories that in the past led to the worst genocide in human history, called the Holocaust. We need to stop this. Here's Kevin McCarthy failing miserably to thread an impossible needle.
What about the railroad?
That you have yet to condemn the former president for
no, I don't think anybody should be spending any time with Nick Fuentes. He has no place in this Republican Party. I think President Trump came out 4 times and condemned him and didn't know who he was.
Well, he just said he didn't know who he was. He didn't condemn him or his ideology.
Well, I condemn his ideology. It has no place in society.
What is your take on that?
And what about the former president for deciding to have that dinner?
And the president didn't know who he was. And the president has given up. You know what? He's been. So he knew who Kanye West said. He didn't know who Fuentes is. Yes, sir.
What had just happened? He knew who Kanye West was and what he said, but he didn't know who Kanye West's friend was, the friend that he brought over to his house that had to be, of course, vetted by Secret Service before he's anywhere near Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. I mean, he invited him over. It's just completely indefensible, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't entertained by Kevin McCarthy trying to defend him. Reporters also brought up Marjorie Taylor Greene, who hung out with Nick Fuentes in the past, and McCarthy said, she denounced him, although she really didn't. Anyway, here's that real quick.
From January.
Thank you.
Leader, 2 questions.
Appreciate it.
Sorry.
Yes.
What about members of the GOP conference who have ties to Nick Fuentes, for example, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene?
She denounced him.
She denounced him. That's it. All these people that keep meeting with him, then they denounce him. So he's been denounced, and we have to move on now. Did you not hear? I'm sorry. Did you not hear? He was denounced. He was denounced. So we don't need to talk about it anymore because he's been denounced. After they invite him over or went to his house, then they denounce him. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Once you go to their house, once they come to your house, you know exactly who they were, who they are, and you're hanging out with them. And that's because you're trying to get their support and their followers' support. And that's bad because they are the neo-Nazis of our time, the David Dukes of our time. Other Republican leaders were more unequivocal with their swift denouncement of both Nick Fuentes and Donald Trump. Here is Senate Minority Leader King Turtle Mitch McConnell. First,
let me just say that there is no room in the Republican Party for anti-Semitism or white supremacy.
You know, I think it seems like there's a lot of room for both anti-Semitism and white supremacy, but...
And anyone meeting with people advocating that point of view, in my judgment, are highly unlikely to ever be elected president of the United States.
But he already was. He already had that point of view, and he already was elected president of the United States. He's always held this point of view. For the record, reporters weren't letting him get off that easy. They pushed back for more follow-up. Here's that scrum and answer.
Leader McConnell, in light of what you said, that there's no room in your party for anyone who harbors these anti-Semitic views, if Donald Trump wins the Republican nomination, would you support him?
Look, let me just say again, there is simply no room in the Republican Party for anti-Semitism or white supremacy. And that would apply to all of the leaders in the party who will be seeking offices.
But of course, if he's the Republican nominee, I will support him, even though he is an anti-Semitic white supremacist and hates my Asian American wife. I'll still have to support him because I am a jellyfish. Well, Senator Mitt Romney was pretty unequivocal. Listen to this harsh criticism from a poorly shaved Mitt Romney and a real 5 o'clock shadow going. I like it, Romney.
It's disgusting to invite people like that to meet with a former president of the United States. I think it's been clear that there's no bottom to the degree to which President Trump will degrade himself and the nation.
No bottom to where Donald Trump would degrade himself. Remember when Mitt Romney degraded himself and had dinner with Donald Trump and also begged for his endorsement when he ran for president in 2012? Remember all that? Then he wanted to get the job and be Secretary of State, I think, with Trump, and then, of course, became a senator. Do I have that right? Well, he's come around. I'm sure he won't be groveling for Donald Trump's approval ever again. Seriously, I really don't. I think he has seen the light, finally. Much too late. Well, Chuck Schumer, of course, Senate Majority Leader and a well-known Jewish New Yorker, did not pull any punches about his feelings of former President Trump meeting with a young neo-Nazi. Well, a couple of them, Kanye and Fuentes. Here is Chuck Schumer.
The former president, and his dinner companion. Now, he says, well, he didn't know that Kanye West, bad enough he was meeting with Kanye West, or Kanye West.
Oh, that was super awkward when Chuck Schumer caught himself calling him Kanye West and then thought, am I being disrespectful? Am I supposed to call him Ye? And then made a snap decision. He's just going to stick with Kanye West, but still lost some momentum. But he got it back right here.
But he didn't know that this virulent anti-Semite, this vicious man, Fuentes, was coming to dinner. But now he knows he was at dinner and he still hasn't denounced him. That is just an utter disgrace. That is un-American. That is not what any leader of any party, of any philosophy should do. I do praise many in the Republican Party and many in the Jewish community who supported the President Trump in the past, for condemning him. But we're still waiting. The silence is deafening and appalling.
Well said by Senator Chuck Schumer right there. By the way, if I'm going to play some of this kid right now, in case you haven't heard, I bet you, I debated whether or not I should play. It's like 2 minutes. Rachel Maddow played it the other night. This is a similar cut that she played. The kid's only 24 years old. I kind of was watching it and thinking about it. I'm like, I wonder if someday, like a lot of other young asshole idiots, he'll see the light and realize how much damage that he did when he was younger. It's possible. Many have done and made similar transformations. Who knows? But here he is, this young, very influential leader of a new white nationalist, Christian nationalist, white supremacists, different terms can apply, anti-Semitic kid, and some of his recent rantings. And I promise I won't play much of him again in the future. I hope he goes away and he continues to be shunned and deplatformed the way that he should be. But here it is.
Abortion's popular. Sodomy's popular. Being gay is popular. Being a feminist is popular. Sex out of wedlock is popular. Contraceptives that's all popular. That's not to say it's good. That's not to say I like that. Popular means the people support it, which they do. And it sucks and it is what it is, but that's why we need dictatorship. That's unironically why we need to get rid of all that.
All right, so there he is calling for dictatorship. He's got that weird laugh, that weird Tucker Carlson, no reason to laugh right now, laugh, and more.
We need to take control of the media or take control of the government and force the people to believe what we believe.
Take control of the media, force people to believe what we believe. Who can get behind that? How is that freedom? Okay, let's listen to a little more of this garbage. Remember, this is the guy that Kanye West and Donald Trump are rolling with now.
Here's the pathway. We have one more election where white people can make the decision. The white people got to make the right decision, and then Trump's got to get in there and never leave. That, to me, at this point, is a pathway. It's time to shut up, elect Trump one more time, and then stop having elections.
Now I'm laughing, but I feel like there's a reason for it. He wants to stop having elections. He just said out loud he's against elections. That's against democracy. That's the whole thing that people have been saying, and that's why it's not fear-mongering to point to Donald Trump, who's rolling with people who believe and spout this shit because he wants their supporters' support. And finally, here's Nick Fuentes saying what we've got to be talking about on our side, which is apparently the Taliban.
We have got to talk about the fundamentals of our worldview and what it would look like to build a society based on our distinct worldview. It looks like a society where women don't have the right to vote. And it looks like a society where boys and girls get married as teenagers and start having kids, and they don't use birth control, and they don't use contraceptives, and they have big families and a high birth rate. And it looks like women wearing veils at church. And it looks like women not being in the workforce. Banning gay marriage is back on the menu. Banning sodomy is back on the menu. Banning contraceptives is back on the menu. And basically, we're having something like Taliban rule in America in a good way. We're having something like a Catholic Taliban rule in America.
All right, that's enough. Thank you very much. That is Nick Fuentes. That's who everybody's been talking about because Donald Trump invited him over to his house. Marjorie Taylor Greene went to his house, and there's others. Paul Gosar rolls with him, and that's what he believes. Those are the things that he would like to see. Does not sound like a very popular platform for any organization, institution, school. Sounds like a really unlikable guy. And yet yesterday he was having hibachi with Kanye West, who used to hang out with the most famous and influential people in the world. And now he's having hibachi at like a strip mall with a 24-year-old kid wearing a blue hoodie who has those ideas and thoughts. So let's get to my conversations about them with Dr. Jason Johnson, and Bill Boyle has a lot of really interesting things to say as well. But first, let's get to Jason. He is an associate professor of communication and journalism at Morgan State University. He's a regular contributor, of course, and anchor, fills in a lot on MSNBC. He is the host of his own podcast called A Word with Jason Johnson on the Slate Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Always love listening to that. And whenever Jason joins me, like Wajid Ali will be joining me tomorrow and plenty of others, I just hit record right when he pops in. And so he jumped in and immediately he attacked my appearance. I was wearing a knitted hat that my brother's partner made for me, which I love. Sitting here in my beloved shed with my scraggly beard, and this is what Jason Johnson had to say about how I looked, and then so I attacked him right back in his space that he was in. Let's do it.
I just got off Survivor. I've just been on a straight keto protein and grass diet for the last couple of months. I'm very impressed, Pete.
And I love your setting. It looks like you are in a vacant apartment about to do an illicit deal of some sort, a transaction, and you are
closer to prison interrogation room. Maybe Kira Sedgwick is right around the corner about to ask me questions.
Could be the best improv in the world if Kira Sedgwick just peeked in your frame. Like what?
Here we go. I'm shaking the one light.
He's got the one bulb in his face because that really throws a suspect off.
Yeah. I'm ready to confess a murder now. Like, fuck, I had no idea. And then the light started rolling and I was frightened. So there we go.
I didn't do it. Whoa, that light. Okay, I did it.
It is a disinfectant to injustice. That's what it is.
We're started. We're recording.
Yes. I figure I know you always start recording from like the moment that I pop on. So I was like, this makes perfect sense.
I've decided I want that to be the way I do it with almost everybody. A lot of people can't just roll in. You do it really well, obviously. Waj, Naira, a lot of people do. But, you get these academics and stuffy journalists, which you are actually both of.
Apparently, yes.
But you have a charisma and a wit and the ability to really dance and improvise, and you understand the rules, and you're a very very funny fellow.
I gotta get my dancing up. I mean, if Twitter finally goes down, I gotta do something on TikTok. So I'll be able to dance and move.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. Does anything sound? Every time I think about what works on TikTok, all of the things that seemingly work to create a popular account, I have no interest in doing any of them dancing or lip syncing, to be specific. Both appall me. What about, do you use it at all? And I want to ask you about Twitter. I definitely wanted to get to that, but do you use TikTok? Do you have any interest in it? Do you view it?
No. So I view it because I'm in a couple of chat rooms where people share stuff from TikTok all the time. I have a fantastic former student, great kid that I mentor named Baldwin Williams, who does voiceover work, who's gone viral on TikTok several times. He does great impressions and he does this crazy cat story things. Cat things never made any sense to me, but he got written up in Newsweek. It seems like right now, TikTok reminds me of early MySpace. I don't know if people remember this, but MySpace at the time, when you sort of had your Burger King, McDonald's, Coke, and Pepsi sort of competition, MySpace versus Facebook, MySpace was where the creatives were. It's where, because it was easier to share music and art on MySpace initially than Facebook. So it seems like a creator space. It doesn't seem like sort of intellectual conversation. It doesn't really seem like engagement. I know that if I were a 17-year-old girl with great fashion sense, I could probably blow up on TikTok tomorrow by dancing and talking about my opinions of K-pop bands. But I'm none of those things right now.
I think that we could, I think that you actually, and I'm being serious now, limit yourself because you are an untapped reserve of talent. That's how I see you. I see you like a gold mine or an oil well, or maybe more modernist, a lithium. You're like a lithium.
Or a big pimple.
Yes. And given the right kind of production, like you could do TikToks about just about anything with quick commentary and fun animation that kind of somebody else dropped in. And all they have to do is just record the video or the audio with Jason Johnson. And then I'm not sure why I don't see those opportunities being knocked on your door, especially given someone with a huge following. So let me ask you about that. You are well known primarily because of television. Of course, you're an academic and you're well known in your writing and your teaching in those circles, but then more mainstream because of your television appearances. Now you've got this great podcast I want to ask you about the last couple of episodes, which I've really enjoyed. But of course, your Twitter presence is something different, which is something huge. And I'm not sure where else you're giant on social media. I just text him, everybody.
Right.
But
he's my actual friend, so he can text me. He doesn't have to go through my people. He doesn't have to go through my people, unless my people are Karen.
Yeah, I feel like I really have the straight lane to you, and it's quite an honor. But what are your thoughts on where Twitter is at? And I'll just say what I've been telling people. I haven't seen that much of a difference in it.
It's funny. I keep thinking of that 90s song, Tell Me All Your Thoughts on God. This is my thing. I've seen a difference in Twitter. Okay. From the moment Musk took over, I lost like 6,000 or 7,000 followers within like a week.
Okay, yes, I agree. I've seen that with people canceling their Twitter accounts, I guess. I don't know why they don't just leave, like, the hotel. Who checks out? Just leave. Just don't use it. Why you?
Well, see, here's the thing. I don't know if that's people dropping the app. I really don't. Because there's been studies showing that, like, democratically held accounts, Democratic members of Congress, they've all lost followers, whereas Republicans and conservatives have gained followers. So there's some other dynamic going on other than active human beings saying, hey, I'm going to go find another club. I've had great colleagues and people who I respect say they're not going to do it anymore. My good friend Kayla Cooper has shut down her account.
They will all be back, I say, like CBS News. Like CBS News.
Yeah, don't even start it on then. Or Jelani Cobb. And remember, like, Ta-Nehisi Coates left Twitter like 8 years ago, right?
He's
so there are
different.
People who are going to leave.
He's different.
He is different. But I say all that to say, almost like, people boycotting football after Kaepernick, I understand everybody's perspective on this. I don't plan on leaving Twitter, but you've probably noticed this, and this has been the case for me for most of this year now. I have spent less time on Twitter talking politics and more time talking about pop culture and sports and stuff like that, because I save my political content for when I'm on the air or when I do shows like Brother from Another Mother on Peacock, when I'm on MSNBC or on my podcast. I use Twitter to talk to people about funny movies and TV shows and things like that. So I don't think that's going to change. But I got to tell you, Pete, the number of people who I know who are moving to Hive, who are moving to Post, who tried Mastodon and left, it's a larger group than I expected. And I've seen all the memes. Is Twitter going to become the mall that's, down to one Macy's and a Burlington coat factory and a record studio? It may not go that far, but you're going to get that dead mall energy the moment something else pops up.
Oh, God. That is the worst feeling, man, for a guy. I mean, I hate malls and the existence of them, but I grew up in them. I came of age in them. A lot of people that came of age in the streets. I came of age in the hallways of mallways, my friend. Arcades and pizza shops and Orange Julius. We hung out there a good bit. To some extent.
Books, sneaking in the back of Spencer's Gifts so you could look at the posters that were a bit risque.
Yes. I was telling my daughters about that the other day. They were like, they just stared at me. They didn't understand. But do you think that that's going to happen? Do you think Twitter is going to drastically change rapidly in the next I mean, you already predicted that mall energy. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I think it will stay. You've got too many people for it to simply disappear.
Yeah.
But if you had asked me in the year 2003, would MySpace disappear one day? I would have said, no, MySpace is never going to disappear. It may get smaller. You may have fewer people on it. It's never going to disappear, right? Well, now MySpace is gone. If you had told me in 2008 that Facebook was going to be desperately clinging to an aging population, like a dying mall, right? Like the one last Sbarro's that's selling only to senior citizens who are doing their morning walk. If you told me that in 2008, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's what Facebook is now. I don't know anybody under the age of 25. And I know a lot of people under the age of 25 because my students at Morgan State, I don't know anybody who's on Facebook. None of my students under 25 are on Facebook. So Twitter could go that way. I just don't know how long it'll be. And I think that similar to how we look, Sarah Kendzior talks about this all the time, similar to how we looked at the previous Trump administration, I think what looks like incompetence on the part of Musk and his new leadership is actually a lot of times intentional. A lot of these folks they see Twitter as the woke mob run amok. And they would rather, if they can't change it, they would rather it break down into nothing rather than have people have free reign to criticize people in power and leadership.
Haven't talked to you. All really interesting, and I want to hear more of your thoughts about that. I could talk to you about that forever. I love it, and I'm sad to see it change drastically. I'm sad to see this cartoon villain billionaire buying it, and I'm sad to see the negative changes and the lack of kind of guidelines and restrictions and morality. But moving on to your take on the midterm elections, Jason, I haven't talked to you.
Yeah, and tell the audience, Pete and I would usually catch up at least like once a month. I literally haven't talked to Pete in like a while. This is our first conversation. There's been crazy stuff going on. Great personal stuff for you, which I'm very happy about, which we've texted, but we didn't get a chance to talk about. Dude, midterm elections, I will say this, right before the midterms, I was down in Atlanta. I went to the party for Stacey Abrams. I went to the party for Warnock. I'm going to be back in Atlanta on Sunday.
Look at you. Atlanta, like political event. You must be, everybody recognizes you and knows you from the TV.
I'm in a mask, man. I'm wearing a mask.
Come on. Are you really? Are you? Okay. All right.
I don't get recognized everywhere, although the people do recognize my voice. So this is the thing, it all started happening right before the midterms, where you had all this sort of flooding of polls and these sort of bad polls and these cheap polls and these off polls. And there was a weird sort of conspiracy to it. I didn't want to believe it for a while, but I saw enough research on it. We suddenly saw all these polls are like, oh yeah, Republicans are doing much better. And it's like, but none of the dynamics on the ground have changed. Like, why is it suddenly looking like these Republicans are doing better? And then it didn't happen, right? Like the Republicans basically got their asses handed to them on so many different levels. They lost 3 different governorships. They blew chances at places they could be successful. State houses in like North Carolina and Michigan and Pennsylvania, got flipped, or at least Democrats increased their control. This was a shellacking of historic proportions. And going into the week, I had said on Nicole Wallace on Deadline, I was like, I don't know anymore. I don't know how this is going to play out. The fundamentals on the ground seem to suggest that Democrats are going to do better than getting wiped out. But the Democrats basically won. And then you see Nancy Pelosi do something that you rarely see politicians do, which is step down basically after a victory in order to allow the new generation to take over. It's like, I'm going to give you the lightsaber before it's taken from my hand. So, America decided that they wanted to save democracy for another 18 months. So that was positive.
I didn't read into, I should have, the timing of her announcement that she would be stepping down. I guess I just saw it as they lost and she's stepping down, and that makes sense. And it's awesome when older, powerful people let go of their power. I guess that's a hard thing to do. And I hope I never have to. I guess we all, to some extent, though. I mean, we could get deeper, just in terms of the power of our own bowels. But why did she? I'm sorry that I went there. But why? You're saying something about the timing of her announcement that maybe I didn't. I should have thought about. What?
Pelosi didn't have to step down. Like, this was arguably a victory. Like, you stepped down as leader of your party, like Newt Gingrich did, right? Like when the Democrats got, and it was 1998. When the Dems did really, really well, despite Gingrich having his contract with America and pushing everything about Monica Lewinsky. And when Democrats did pretty well in the 98 midterms, he was like, all right, I take the sword to the chest, right? I gotta step down. Usually that's what leaders do. Pelosi, this was arguably a victory. This was a victory. There was no way she didn't have to step down. She chose to, and is opening the pathway for new leadership, her and Clyburn and Steny Hoyer. And that's impressive. We're going to have Republican control of the House for 2 years. They're not going to get a damn thing done because McCarthy doesn't have much power or leadership, and the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Jim Jordans and the Matt Gaetzes, who for some reason still hasn't faced justice for serious allegations about inappropriate behavior, those people are going to be running amok. And assuming that the Democrats increase their lead in the Senate, which seems likely at this point, given the numbers with Warnock, the new Democratic leadership in the House will get 2 years to learn how to manage message and legislation without any real responsibility because they're not going to be running the House. And Pelosi allowed that to happen. It's rare. It's really rare. I'll put it like this. In a lesser version, this would be like Joe Biden stepping down at the State of the Union. This would be like Joe Biden saying, you know what? 2 years in office. I got shots in the arms. We saved the economy from an absolute collapse. Thanks to my leadership, we've gained a seat in the Senate. We didn't lose that much in the House. It's the best showing for a first-term president since 1922. It's literally been 100 years. Deuces, right?
Yeah.
And hands it off it off to Kamala Harris. Like it's roughly that. That's kind of what Pelosi did.
Don't you think that Pelosi also probably was like, you know what? My husband just got attacked in our home. I am just making us a target, my entire family a target. They think I'm a demon. They're saying crazy shit about us. I am also deuces because I would like to go spend time with my family. I'm 80, whatever. I don't know. But
she's not leaving office. That's the thing. She's still not leaving office till 2024.
Yeah,
so
but she's not that high profile leader leading the Democratic Party. They get a new target, which might be a light-skinned black man.
Yes.
Interesting. Let me ask you,
that happens a lot in American politics.
What?
You say a light-skinned black man?
I was thinking of Hakeem Jeffries, right?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if I would call him light, but white voters, it's been shown, tend to have a preference towards fairer-hued African-American candidates.
Jamal Bowman. I'm trying to think of the darkest black-skinned elected politician, and then think of where they got elected. Like
it would probably be James Clyburn. I mean, if I don't have everybody in front of me in notions of lightness and darkness.
Oh, I do. I have them all up here in the studio, in the shed.
You have the what is it? The meme from Family Guy where it's like terrorist to
all the way. Just so you know, just to be fair, it's not even. It is like technically just a bunch of different hues. And on the far left, which is whitest, is in fact Paul Gosar, which is yeah. Well, how about the question I want to ask you next, though, is what is happening in this country as a result of the midterms? I'm seeing a lot of analysis, which I kind of agree with, that Republicans have gone way too far. Their leader is a white supremacist who sat down with a white supremacist, which dominated the Thanksgiving news cycle, which is not a terrible thing, actually. I'm glad that he's out there meeting with them. His own Israeli ambassador had to denounce him. I was like, that's a little bit too far. And other right-wing Israelis and Jewish Americans even. But they went too far with abortion and with other things and their conspiracy theories and all of that. And young people came out and like, no, this country, we do not want you people running this country. And though, as a result of the midterm elections, we're seeing maybe more or crazier types of violence as a result.
Well, yeah, we're going to see more of that because
gay nightclubs, racial attacks, religious attacks, synagogues, et cetera, being targeted.
Well, but I mean, the shooting at UVA, I mean, that was personal and problematic. Like, I don't think that had any larger political message.
Same with the one at Walmart.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like workplace violence, which is crazy and sick that in America we're sort of like, that was just workplace violence.
We're not.
I mean, like,
I thought about that. I thought about that, and that these are the most horrible idea. The idea that you could be in a place that you could be shot randomly is terrifying for anybody, and it happens so often, not nearly as much as other gun violence, specifically suicide and obviously homicide. But when it's a group that's targeted for, an immutable characteristic for their or religion, race, or or sexual orientation, that has hate behind it and terrorism, and it is different because those people are animated by a kind of political motive. I think they can be differentiated in terms of what kind of causes them and who should get guns, et cetera. But
they can be, but I think ultimately, and I said this last week, like the larger issue at play, and this goes with what happened in the midterms, right? The larger issue at play is like, I can say a lot of these things, they hit me very differently now as I've sort of evolved politically and personally, because they're not abstract anymore. And I talk about like Mother Emanuel and how my friend Clem Pinckney was killed. And I'd known Clem for 20 years.
Yeah.
And the DC sniper. The DC sniper's last victim was at the gas station that my family used, like the gas you get right before we got on to 95. Like it was right there. It was across from, at that point, a Howard Johnson's. A shooting at UVA, a terrorist attack at UVA. I know where all those places are. I am a UVA alumni. I was just on campus about 2 months ago, right? So these things no longer are random. They're not abstract. No, I've never been to El Paso, right? But I've been to Chesapeake and I've been to a Walmart. What we saw, I think, also in a lot of the voting this year is that people were pushing for those kinds of changes at the local level as well. Because your gun laws don't come from the feds as much as they come from your state.
Right.
Your state house and your state senate are the ones who are saying in Georgia whether or not you can walk into a damn, whether you can walk into church with a gun.
Well, that's
right?
where your court challenges also come from. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. Exactly. So those sorts of things, I think a lot of young people, and think about it, like after, not Sandy Hook, after Parkland in Florida, think of all the people who got activated after Parkland in Florida, but we didn't see that kind of sea change necessarily that we saw this year. So I'm not optimistic. I don't do that. But I'm definitely like, hey, Americans decided not to screw itself over. And as long as we've got voices out there, important voices that are highlighting these real issues that aren't being suppressed or abused or taken advantage of one way or another, and whether that's on Twitter or whether that's on air or whether that's on radio or whether that's on podcasts, I think the voice of what the American people actually want is going to keep getting pushed.
Jason Johnson is here for about 6 more minutes, and I have 2 other very separate topics, both of which you covered in your last 2 episodes of your podcast, available everywhere. A Word on Slate.com. And let's start with the World Cup. You're clearly not a huge soccer fan. I could tell that by the interview that you did, but you interviewed an expert and you focused on a lot of things around the World Cup. But the issue that I really wanted to know about is race and soccer, and more refined specifically in America. And you can talk about the lack of black players in baseball. And then, of course, in soccer, I think you said on that podcast, it's like the least popular sport for black people or something.
Yes.
Yeah. I want people to go listen to that episode. But what did you learn from your excellent guest? Let me go look up his name.
Yeah, this is the cool thing. And I asked a bunch of people. I asked Howard Bryant. I asked Michael Smith, Michael Holley, the guys who I co-host with at Brother from Another Mother. I asked a lot of black sportscasters I knew. And I was like, guys, anybody who knows anything about soccer? One of the things, and I know you have this experience as well, one of the things I love when I do my podcast Word is I like having guests where I don't know a damn thing about what the subject matter is.
Yeah, that's my whole career.
Yeah, because I'm like, hey, I don't know, right? So it was interesting. I mean, he explained like
Jermaine
what the rounds are.
Scott, who is a professor of African American Studies at Florida Atlantic University. I really enjoyed this guy.
Yeah, he was cool. So basically it was like he explained the whole rounds thing, how you have to make it out of the first round and you get a certain amount of points and you get it's like 1 point for a tie and 3 points for a win. And the United States has 2 points now because we tied England and we tied Wales. And basically tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, if we beat Iran, then the United States ends up getting to the second round, which is something that we haven't done in 2 different cycles since we make it last time. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I know what's at stake, right? Here's the other interesting thing. We talk about race. So there's an interview with something Tyler. He's the team captain for Team USA. And an Iranian journalist, this is on Twitter, I just saw it this morning. An Iranian journalist was like, first off, get the name right. Like you keep saying Iran and it's like you keep saying Iran and it's Iran, right? So he corrects the guy. The guy's like, okay, cool. And he's like, how do you feel playing for a country that has so many issues with discrimination?
Yeah,
and how black
I'm going to play the clip.
Yes.
I'll play it. Let me just remember before. So now you can comment on it. His name is Tyler Adams. He's a real well-spoken, smart guy. And I say that because I'm talking about athletes and they aren't always. Not knowing the fact that is he mixed race? I don't know. He said, anyway.
I think he's black and he was raised by a white family.
He said he was black and raised by a white family. Anyway, the question, folks heard it. So what do you want to say about that?
Well, first off, there's always this funny thing. And like I said, I do sports analysis now too. And it's like asking international athletes to explain, account for, justify, or in any way ameliorate the rest of the world's feelings about what their countries do is kind of crazy. I mean, it just is. It just is, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a paid freaking professional. If you run into me, and an academic, if you run into me in England, in France, in South Africa, my mom is in Sierra Leone right now, right? You go down there because she's amazing and doing mom things. But you go down there and if someone asks me, why does America do what it does? I can explain it. But asking a professional athlete that question is always sort of silly for me, unless the person has said, hey, I'm the athlete that this is what I do, right?
Right.
Because you know what? You could end up talking
Muhammad Ali or Jesse Owens or more, now Megan Rapinoe or Colin Kaepernick or the great Brett Favre, who's very outspoken.
Right, exactly. Outspoken and out there taking money from poor people.
Hey, listen.
So I didn't think it was a great question.
The volleyball stadium. I'm sorry. I talked over you. What were you finishing the point about?
Well, no. So I was just saying, off the rip, I didn't really think it was the smartest of questions. I get why people do that, but it's like, whatever. How's he going to explain it? And what's he going to say? Yeah, America is a racist country and it's structurally racist and culturally racist. And we've made incremental changes. And so I'm proud to play. No, he's playing a damn game. What I would also say is this, and this is something very funny coming from an Iranian journalist. He's lucky and fortunate that Tyler didn't turn around and be like, dude, are we really going to have this conversation about oppression? I mean, first off, we could talk about FIFA in general and what was it? John Oliver said.
It could have been if he was like really, I don't know, ballsy and knew his beats. He could have just nailed that. He must have known that question was coming from the Iranian journalist. I would hope they would have coached him to tell him, hey, that guy's out there and this is going on, because he has nothing to do with the whole controversy over the Iranian flag thing. But still,
he can't control that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, he didn't answer the question. It's not how I would have answered it. It's not even how I would have answered it as an athlete.
Right.
But I say that to say, that's the typical kind of issue about race when it comes to these sports, that nobody wants to give a crap about the racial backgrounds and identities of these people coming from oppressed and manipulated and colonized countries. But then when you're representing a particular nation, they want to ask you all these deep and meaningful questions like, what the hell are you really supposed to say? Yeah. And how much level of training do you have in answering those questions? Right. Somebody could ask me, you can ask me about any job I work at right now, Pete, and what am I going to tell you? Okay, they work for America. Are they really going to say what they actually think? I can't say what I actually think about a lot of different places. It's not my job. It's not my responsibility. And I may have not even have enough information about it. So,
right.
But I watched, actually, Karen and I watched America versus Wales, I think last Friday.
Karen Madison.
Yeah. So we watched because she had it recorded. So I came over and we watched America versus Wales. And then I didn't see England, and I'm going to watch tomorrow. I'm actually going to watch U.S. versus Iran. Whenever there's sort of two countries that actually hate each other geopolitically, it's always entertaining. It's like the Olympics in the 80s. You got to hate the Russians. There you go.
That is, it certainly is. Well, now look at you. You're into it. And watching it with friends. I love it. All right. Well, the last thing I want to ask you, if you got time, is about Wakanda Forever. I took my daughter.
What did you think? I have so many thoughts.
Oh, I mean, listen, I'm not. I think that I should never be asked what I think about a film because I'm never.
Yeah, it's full of black people.
Less articulate. There was a lot of blacks. I noticed that. It was good to see that one white guy, the Fed.
Yes.
He seemed to be. He seemed to understand. He seemed to be into black people and understanding of their culture. The
best he could.
I can't articulate feelings about music or film or television very well in a way that would interest anybody on tape. So I don't. I want to ask you about it. I will just say that I loved it. I liked it more than the first one.
Oh, good Lord.
I think partially because was that an appalling take?
I find it deeply appalling, but please continue.
And were you even offended by it?
I was deeply offended. I wasn't even offended. I wasn't evenly anything. I was deeply offended.
I think I like all the women dominating. I think I just liked it better. I'm not trying to be kind of virtuous or anything. I think I like that. I don't know. I love Lupita Nyong'o. Am I saying her name right? I interviewed her once. She is, I think, one of the most amazingly beautiful human beings to look at. I like that a lot. I'm sorry. I like this movie better. I did.
Is it T-Mobile or Sprint that gives you the plan for that level of virtue signaling? I just want to find out in case I need to.
I'm on a Verizon plan that is exclusive to saying how attractive you think specific black women are to you. And to say that even that's why you like the film, because there's more black women than black men that you're not as attracted to. Although, what's his name? Creed, Michael B. Jordan.
Yes, Michael. Yes,
he's too good looking in a weird kind of way. And in too good a shape, and I don't love his acting. I liked Creed a lot, but I didn't love him in the first Black Panther. See, this is why I shouldn't talk about it. Why did you ask? What did you think?
So
you had a great episode with this writer, by the way. Everybody should go listen to that. That was a smart take if you want it. So I'm just getting yours. I should shut up.
And also, you can check out my podcast with my dear friend Phil Boutte, who is a concept designer who helped develop. Like, you can find him on Instagram. He helped develop Talokan and Namor and everything else like that. So I have very good friends who are like actual artists, writers, people involved.
Yeah.
So I will say this. I thought the movie felt more necessary than entertaining. And what it boils down to is, like, once you decided, hey, we're not going to recast Chadwick Boseman, we're going to play that into the movie. This was about the best you could do given that limitation, right? It wasn't a Marvel action movie. It wasn't a superhero movie. It was a MCU drama. It was about people mourning. Were there some plot issues? Yes, I think so. I don't think Riri Williams was entirely necessary. I don't understand how a super sophisticated nation whose entire culture is based around the idea of vibranium never thought to look for it anywhere else on the planet. But those things being aside, you know, this was the best you could do under the circumstances. I'll be curious to see what they do down the road. It wasn't a bad movie. I've seen it twice. But by comparison, I saw I saw Black Panther 4 times. I saw it 4 times. I saw it once in the Blacksonian in DC. I saw it once with Tiffany Cross. I saw it once with my cousin. And I saw it once with another group of friends. So I've only seen this half as many times. And I think there were some plot difficulties. But, you know, hey, it's going to make a ton of money. It was not a bad movie. It certainly had more going for it than, say, Spider-Man No Way Home, which I enjoy Tom Holland. But I was like, OK, this plot doesn't make any sense one way or another. And that's one of the things, I'll just say this quickly, as you talked about when it comes to movies. Look, there's a difference between saying something is good or bad versus whether or not it appeals to me as an individual. Me as an individual, I thought the movie was, again, necessary more than entertaining. But It doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
Wow, what a review. I'm now offended.
It's what I do. I deeply, deeply offend people.
I really enjoyed it a lot. Part of why I enjoy these films is because they're something that my daughter and I do together. And with very little criticism, usually. We just love them. And I thought the Riri Williams, that's the actress's name, right?
Well, that's the character that she played.
Oh, that's the character. Her name is Dominique Thorne, I think.
Yeah, Dominique Thorne played
I liked her, and I liked that storyline, so I completely disagree with you, but I don't have any way to articulate it. I just liked it.
My black card outweighs your opinion, so just had to let you know. I learned that when I learned about soccer, too.
Yeah, nobody was...
Black cards, yellow cards, and red cards.
Certainly nobody was confused on this one issue. That your black card. Now, if I brought you into my wheelhouse, which is shed building,
I know nothing about
then we would have a real problem, wouldn't we?
We would be arguing about aluminum siding versus wood.
I can't even.
We would be having conversations about wiring and AC versus DC current, and it'd be a lot.
I had someone do all the hard things, so I don't even have a card. I have a card, and I'm an expert in nothing, but I certainly am Very curious about a lot of things, which is why I love talking to you. Thank you very much for talking to me. It's great to have you back, and let's not make it so long. I blame you.
Yes, and let's legit just catch up later on this week and chat. I've so much to share, Mr. Dominic.
Looking forward to it, buddy. All right, there he goes, Dr. Jason Johnson. I wonder what he has to share. Hey, if you aren't following him on Twitter, give him a follow and let him know that you heard him here on the show. He's still there, existing on that social media platform, and it's always great to let our guests here know that you heard them on the program wherever they are. You can email them, look them up, say, I always love it when you talk to Pete, ask him a question, whatever. I love when guests begin to have relationships with folks who listen to the show the way I have. So let them know, Jason Johnson. And speaking of listeners to the show, that's how our next guest started. Now he's one of the most sought after guests on this show. Can you believe it? He's a simple businessman in Washington, D.C., a family man, a father, and a husband. He's got nothing to gain and nothing to lose. We're always happy to have him joining us for a wide-ranging conversation. Today was no exception. He is on Twitter at Bill B in D.C. If you want to say hello to him, he joins us almost every Thursday. He's there often. I will say, he joins us and hangs out with us at our Thursday night hangouts. We always love to hear from him. We had a great conversation. I think you're going to love it, so let's do it. Speaking of trouble, huh? Let's get to your boy Elon Musk. Nobody has hated Elon Musk for longer and more intensely than my friend Bill Boyle. Nobody that I know. You started, take us to the origin of your hatred. By the way, I think this is another reason to respect you and give you a lot of credibility. You hated Elon Musk when other people, especially, you know, people in my lane, kind of lazy environmentalists. I like to think I'm super engaged and I care about things and I want to be the change I want to see and I'm very involved and so on. But like, I kind of was like, Elon Musk, he's the Solar City Tesla EV guy. He's doing good things. That's a good thing. Those cars are really good for the environment. But you hated him even then.
Yes. This comes down again to just sort of where you are in life and given what I do for a living. Seriously, like, I'm in the transportation world, right? Cars, transportation infrastructure, power, all that stuff is related to my career and my industry. And so when people were raving about Teslas, guys that I know who are total gearheads, and I don't mean gearheads like messing around in their garages, but people who assess vehicles, they're like, these cars suck. And they suck in a bunch of different ways. They're not made well. They're this, they're that, they're overpriced. All these things like that about Tesla, you were hearing how bad they were. And more importantly, I was hearing from people who do data that the self-driving thing was complete bullshit. And the more I looked into it, the more it proved to be true. And, you know, a thing that I was saying 4 years ago, which again, I heard from people who knew, was that here's a classic. Tesla's accident rates, self-reported, did not include if you were driving your Tesla down the street and all of a sudden the car veered off to hit a tree. When you grabbed the wheel, hit the brake, and tried to stop it from happening and hit the tree anyway, Tesla marked that as a human error accident.
In effect, you're reacting to your car's...
You're trying to save it. You're trying to keep it from causing the accident.
Right. So
but the minute that you take any control, they say, oh, nope, that's human error.
Interesting.
So they were bullshitting everybody forever about the actual safety of their car. They were calling them self-driving when they weren't, and still are not even close to being. And they were and Musk this is his deal. He's a snake oil salesman. He gets a bunch of money into these things and then says, this is going to solve the world. And what he does, by the way, and you referenced it a minute ago, he's very adroit at attaching what he's doing to some larger socially or environmentally just issue.
As he decides it now. He
decides it, and it's a way to inure him from getting criticized, right? With Tesla, we're good for climate change, we're saving the environment. Meanwhile, the company mostly made money by buying carbon credits from Ford, from Volvo, selling carbon credits to all these big car companies that were selling internal combustion engines. That's how they made their money. So they were a parasite on the internal combustion engine.
I have no idea exactly how that market worked, and I don't even want you to explain it, but I'll look into it
Make it super simple. Make it super simple. You're in the EU, especially. You're producing internal combustion engine cars. Those countries, the EU, wanted you to offset the damage you're doing to the environment.
Oh,
right?
Because I didn't think we had that market in the U.S.
No, well, no, but you're not stuck in the U.S. It's a global
right?
market.
No, you're talking about that they were selling these, they were buying these carbon credits from international companies who were manufacturing cars. That had their governments had these restrictions on how much.
Correct. So Tesla is producing EVs, getting carbon credits for that from the U.S. government. Ford, Volvo, everybody else is producing internal combustion engines. They need carbon credits.
Got it.
There's a market.
Yeah.
Right. And so really, he was a parasite on the internal combustion engine business. That's how he made his money. And then you look at the Boring Company, another great one.
Well, a parasite, you use a parasite, you called it a business, and I've heard this lately, like he made so much money, or that the company was able to exist and be built on government subsidies, government credits.
He got a $450 million government bailout to keep the company alive. He's exactly like Ross Perot, where these guys go in there with their charts and their bullshit, and they tell you how to run how the government sucks and how you need to do these things to have a good economy and all. If only all of us were entrepreneurs like him.
Yeah.
Of course, Ross Perot built his company on government contracts, and Elon Musk doesn't exist. Tesla does not exist, and Boring Company doesn't exist without government contracts, and in Tesla's case, government bailout. So these guys are essentially bullshit, and always have been. And the Boring Company is a great example.
Yeah, what is the Boring Company?
So Musk wanted to sell cars, right? And he decided, looking at California in particular, that mass transit was a threat to his future car empire that he imagined he was going to have.
Of course.
So he started a company where I'm going to revolutionize mass transit, and we're going to make drilling and tunneling very cheap, hence boring, as in boring in. And we're going to reinvent those engines and those machines, and then we're going to build tunnels everywhere where you're not going to have any traffic anymore because your car is going to go through this mass transit tunnel. It is such a profoundly
the
fucking
car would sit on
idea.
like a cart, like it gets on a
Look
little
at it this way. Is the Lincoln Tunnel a great example of mass transit? Is the Holland Tunnel? Name a tunnel. It doesn't magically, like you wave your wand and magically that tunnel suddenly becomes cheap to build and lessens congestion. It's just another fucking road. And the only thing that was going to be different about Musk was he said, we're going to build these tunnels cheaply. But what they did when they went to all these places, they did it in Maryland, they did it in LA, they went to Las Vegas, whatever. They bought a second-hand tunnel digging machine, which they named Godot, as in waiting for Godot. Godot is the guy in the play who never fucking shows up, right? And they basically went and did all these presentations to all these cities. Maryland was going to build a red line, didn't, because Musk told them, or Baltimore was. Musk said, no, we're going to do this really better, cheap, faster thing. And so they canceled all their plans to do this. And guess what Maryland is still waiting for?
Elon Musk's boring
Godot,
tunnel?
the fucking tunnel digging machine. Maryland completely cleared the slate under Larry Hogan, made it simple for them to start the work, got rid of all the red tape, everything. And then they just got fucking ghosted by Musk. They just never showed up.
Really? I mean, and there's been really good reporting on that, right?
There's a great story that's out today that I'm almost quoting from, telling you.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were talking about. Oh, wow.
Right, and so you see the same thing, right?
So is that tunnel idea, that boring idea? I thought that they implemented it somehow, or they piloted it somewhere.
They put one in Las Vegas where you go about 30 miles an hour in your Tesla. I think it's limited to Teslas.
Really?
So it's basically a rich person with a Tesla,
He built a tunnel just for the cars that he manufactured?
Yes, of course. Of course. And again, by the way, he ties that to congestion, right? So Tesla was about climate change. Boring companies to solve congestion. Well, now on Twitter, guess what he's solving? freedom of speech, Pete.
Well, let's get one more thing before we get to Twitter and how he's solving the issue of freedom of speech. The other thing that always bothered me about the Tesla company is the charger. So I have a Chevy Volt, and the charger doesn't fit. The Tesla charger is proprietary, and so I'm not just the plug, but the entire charger, the entire infrastructure. Yes. So you see, there's Tesla charging ports, but you can't drive up to that in any other manufacturer's car. That's my understanding. And
that is correct.
And that's a shit thing to do. So when he shared the kind of open source ideas to how to manufacture the car or the software?
The actual, I think it's literally the mechanics of the charger.
And everybody gave him credit for that, but then it's all proprietary. It's like,
so when he shared that because what he wanted was for the U.S. government to make that the national standard. That's why he shared that. So he didn't share it out of the goodness of his heart. He shared it because he thought, awesome, we're in effect going to be the guys who own the property or own the manufacturing of basically every gas station in the country once we go electric.
Right.
I mean, it was all designed, again, to create this little rentier economy silo where everyone has to go to him. And that again gets at like how bullshit he is. His whole idea is to set up systems where you have to go to him, or you have to go to him for whatever you're doing with him.
Yeah.
And Tesla does that constantly. They're enormously hostile to anybody outside creating any secondary market things for Tesla. And it gets again at where he is really like a P.T. Barnum. He's really like a Trump. Extraordinarily like Trump.
Yeah, extraordinary. And even more now with what he's doing on Twitter and much less doing to Twitter. So what do you want to say about where we're at? I mean, I've just made the observation that he is like Trump in the way, and I think it's important to kind of say this out loud, acknowledge it. We had this daily sense of anxiety when Donald Trump was on Twitter and was president because he had all the power in the world and he was saying crazy things. And so it put any normal thinking person, even if you weren't that engaged, on edge, just knowing that the guy could launch a tweet any moment that would shut the grid down or whatever, just make a mockery of us, embarrass us, and so on. Now we have something very similar because Elon Musk is the richest man in the world and one of the most powerful in so many ways, but especially now that he's in control of one of the most popular media platforms on the entire planet, the entire world. And he is now on it doing this similar things. He's got that similar amount of power. And now he's there haunting us with each and every tweet.
Sure.
The parallels are almost congruent as they can be with two powerful people in the world in a certain similar period of time.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I think that this comes from his what he does, what he's been doing. And what he's doing with Twitter, by the way, is doing all this crazy stuff. For instance, they got rid of their restrictions against posting COVID misinformation.
They did. When did they do that?
Dropped it yesterday or today.
Where are they on polio misinformation?
Exactly.
Right behind.
And
that's going to be very bad.
Though, I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, I just said that's going to be very bad. I'm not sure how much those restrictions were doing. I think they were probably somewhat effective, but
wait a week and you'll see. What's interesting though, like Trump, it's all this self-aggrandizing bullshit. That's Elon Musk. That's Trump.
Yeah.
And what they're really interested in is approval and support. They don't really give a shit about where they get it from, right? And so for Musk, I mean,
that's a very interesting point. Because I care about approval and support, but it's always been very important that it came from a diverse group of people that shared a certain sense of morality, at least, or kindness, or any measure. And it would really bother me if someone who I found reprehensible in their views and actions really liked me. I'd be like, that says something about me. So I just wanted to unpack that a little bit because I think that's interesting. The difference between I care, but it matters who's supporting me. But go on with your point. Sorry.
Well, because you're not a sociopath, right? I mean, these guys are looking for. Well, I mean,
no,
most of the time, most of the time,
no, in no way. I don't think. Am I?
I would think that's a hard no. Keep it there. But the big thing that you're seeing with these guys is that they cloak themselves. Trump cloaked himself in making America great again. That was all bullshit. He didn't care about that. He cared about power and being and the self-aggrandizing endorphin rush on his.
He would sell America. He sold America piece by piece.
Of course, and he sold his soul, and he continues to.
Yeah.
Musk is the same thing. I mean, we talk about Musk. We talk about Trump having dinner with Kanye and that Onan Gruppenführer fucking Nick Fuentes. And by the way, for folks out there, Onan Gruppenführer is a term I invented. Onan is the sin of masturbation. And a Gruppenführer is the Nazi term for like an SS officer.
That is.
I thought Onan Gruppenführer was like the perfect description of Nick Fuentes. You know, a weird incel who imagines that he's the Führer. But anyway,
we have to trademark that.
You know what? No, free use. It's all free. Everyone can use that.
Right. You don't want to make money off of your German nickname
off
for
of a young Nazi masturbation meme. Thanks, but no. Because again, I'm not a sociopath. I wouldn't want to make money.
Fair enough. Fair. Well said. Yeah.
I completely lost my train of thought.
Well, what do you want to say about, you're talking about Musk and Fuentes and Trump and making.
Oh, I got it. So we're talking about how the former fucking president sat down with anti-Semites and Nazis, right?
Yeah.
Who is promoting them now on Twitter? Kanye was allowed back on by Musk. I'm getting this wave of completely clownish, Groyper, incel, Nazi mentions all the time when I open Twitter. I mean, these are both the same guy. They're looking
Groyper is they're the followers of Nick Fuentes.
Yes. And they're the guys that say lots of ugly, nasty, anti-Semitic and racist stuff, but they pretend it's sardonic. And it's not sardonic. It's their Fuentes is a purveyor of this exact thing. They're smart enough not to just say it super bluntly most of the time. And they try to make it like, well, you know, come on, we're just kidding. You know, we're being jokey Nazis is what it comes down to. And Trump and Musk are in that same lane now, very much in that same lane. What's interesting about it is that Musk is in a more dangerous place than Trump because Musk isn't out there as a politician. And Tesla stock is down 54% as of this morning when I checked. Twitter is circling the drain. They've lost something, I think, about 47% of their revenue. Musk is really in much more of a place to have a meltdown that destroys him than Trump is.
The advertising revenue is a metric that any reporter, it'll be public, and any reporter will be able to cover it. And you could put it in a tweet on Twitter about how much money Twitter has lost under Elon Musk's ownership and leadership. And I don't know how he's going to spin that. Currently, he's spinning it by attacking Apple, specifically the CEO of Apple, Tim Apple, and Tim Cook. So he called him out. Why aren't you advertising with us? Like, what? Right. What is that? What is the point? Is he's making it known that advertisers are leaving, which is probably a bad idea to do. He's calling them out like they're going to come back. That's pretty bad.
No, they're going to say "fuck you." Here's what's so crazy.
Are they going to if it pays to advertise on Twitter?
But it doesn't.
Well, the point is going to be about all these companies hate free speech,
but advertising. Deciding whether or not to advertise somewhere is free speech. You can't tell me I have to buy the.
You must put a billboard. You must put a billboard up here behind this tree.
Right, like I have to advertise in like Das Stürmer. If I don't, my parking company is blowing off free speech. It's completely bullshit. And by the way, here's the thing that kills me: Elon Musk is mad that Apple won't advertise on his site, which Apple, by the way, very bluntly, their head of creative and advertising said, we're not there because we're not able to get any input, interaction with these guys, and we don't trust them. They flat out just said it. So they're not like doing something, on the side. But he doesn't just want them to advertise and says that's about free speech. He also wants to charge each of us $8 for providing him with content he can sell to advertisers. It's completely absurd. So what am I supposed to say? it's anti-free fucking speech that I have to pay to speak on your platform. That's obviously bullshit. It's ridiculous. And he is just a flailing man-child who I honestly don't think we can really plumb the logic of his actions because there isn't any.
Yesterday,
he just wants to be affirmed.
Yesterday at the Maricopa, Arizona board meeting, a guy went up and said, "You're stifling my free speech by only giving me 2 minutes to practice my free speech," basically. And then a couple days ago, a man at a Seattle airport began yelling Nazi slurs at passengers who were about to board the plane. There's all kinds of videos of it. And he was saying horrible things. I'm not even going to repeat them. And they told him he couldn't get on the plane, Bill. And then he accused them of stifling his free speech. And the reason I bring up these two examples is because you had a great point about Twitter and free speech. There seems to be a real lack of understanding of what that means for a whole generation of Americans who are wanting to be able to say anything they want, wherever they want, to whomever they want, without any kind of consequences, I guess. That guy didn't make his flight, and I don't think he's ever gonna be able to fly again, because the vast majority of us, Bill, don't think if you're yelling stuff about anything, frankly, that you get to get on the plane with us.
So here's the thing. It's actually not the vast majority of us that makes that decision. The people who make that decision are the people who own the airline. It's a private plane. It's private enterprise. They get to decide. And by the way, this guy is probably, and Musk is probably the kind of person who says, how dare you make that cake guy out in the mid-fucking West somewhere make a cake for a gay wedding?
Yeah.
Right? It's the same paradigm where they just want the speech they want to hear. And they don't give a shit about yours. They don't give a shit about my right as a business owner. Right? I got to tell you, Pete, you come into one of my garages and start swearing about Nazis.
Yeah, what happens?
Your ass is out and you're never parking there ever again.
Is it true that if you get that, you'll even keep their car for yourself?
It might take me a while to give it back to them. Yeah. Yeah. There might be bureaucratic hurdles that make this difficult. It's a ridiculous thing. But by the way, let's just go right back to where this really lands. This is about privilege. This is about people who are typically, you never run into anybody. You don't run into like a liberal Catholic priest who did work for AIDS patients in the 80s saying, damn it, why am I not allowed to say whatever I want? You don't run into a person feeding homeless people or for that matter, like a conservative who gives to charity in the Midwest in his local town. Those are not the people out there saying, why the fuck can't I say whatever I want to say wherever I want to? It's not those people. It's the cranks and the assholes who want to control you. It's not about their freedom of speech. It's about imposing it and imposing their particular version of it on you. Yeah. And by the way, Nick Fuentes said this on one of his podcasts. We need to take this country over and force people to think the way we think.
Yeah, he advocates for a dictatorship, a total dictatorship, and we have to help Trump get elected, and he'll be the last president. Right. I mean, he says all this, but it's just sardonic.
Yeah, exactly. It's Groyper. It's
kidding around.
I got to tell you, that's a thing that really bothers me. Up until the last year or two, I would read these sort of intellectual, bien paysan, like sort of writers, particularly in New York, who were sort of alongside the world of the right wing. And who's your buddy who helped start Vice? Gavin McInnes. Like the kind of folks who knew Gavin McInnes 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And they would like snarkily write about the Groypers, like, oh, these kids, they're just whatever. They're not a non-dangerous phenomenon.
They sat down with the guy who's running for president, who was the last, who was president. He had dinner with him at his house.
And what you will hear if you talk to people who work in politics, who talk to Republicans, and I do, and I talk to some people who are actual Republicans working in Republican politics, and they'll tell you that the ideas come from these kids because these are the younger staffers.
That the ideas
in all of these offices. The crazy shit you see in the Republican Party, it's not coming from John Thune. It's not coming from Mitt Romney.
No, it's
not coming.
No, it's generated.
Yeah,
it's generated on the internet somewhere, or on a radio show, or a podcast, or YouTube show. And then
they're going to write a speech, and their speechwriter is a 26-year-old kid, totally immersed in that subculture.
Yeah.
That's how this stuff happens.
Yeah, transgender bathroom stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that like fucking Cornine thought twice about transgender bathrooms in his life? No, of course. I didn't even know about it. It became a thing because these Groyper assholes and the younger radicals are the ones that push it into the mainstream.
So what do you make of these right-wing Jewish leaders, Israelis, the Mort Kleins, who is it, Stephen Friedman, his ambassador to Israel, Friedrich, whatever his name was, he basically was like, these guys who have supported Trump drew the line at Trump sitting down with a neo-Nazi, and they're like, hey, that's not who you are. And we're going, that's who he's always been. What do you mean? That's not, that. Of course, that's who he is. That's who he's always been. What do you make of people abandoning him because of that, or because he lost a lot? You're seeing, in the midterms, of people he supported, and so there seems to be a lot of folks that used to support him either even being critical of him or in fact denouncing him or saying we're done with you. What do you think? What's happening with?
I love the sort of how could this possibly have happened vibe you get from these folks, as if this is not the guy who said there were good people on both sides after Charlottesville, right? And there's a historical parallel that I think makes a lot of sense. Orthodox Jews who were really kept themselves away from German society. They were the minority in Germany of Jews, but they really kept themselves away from society. They didn't mingle. They didn't whatever. They assumed that the Nazis were not going to come for them.
Yeah.
Because they were not injecting themselves into mainstream German society. And they still all ended up going to the camps.
Yeah, I was reading about that. Jason Stanley tweeted about just that yesterday, some passage from some history book. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not, he is not exaggerating it. In fact, if anything, he sort of understates it. A lot of Jews figured, I'm not going in, I don't own a department store in downtown Berlin that's ripping off small, shopkeepers. I'm some guy cutting fucking wood in the Jura. Why would they bother me? And they still all ended up in the camps. And this gets down to a basic fact.
Yeah.
Which is people have the biases and political demands that they are going to have. And they will ignore the axe hanging over their head forever unless it actually chops their head off. These guys, by the way, I will guarantee you this. 8 out of 10 of them will be back with Trump within 6 months.
You think so?
100%.
You think the politicians and the right-wing pundits who are starting to abandon him will come back to him?
The guys that you were talking, like the Zionist Organization of America, those folks.
Yeah, I can see that because their interest is in line with his in terms of Israel's domestic interests and politics and Jerusalem, and the Palestinians and all that. But
yeah, I mean, Eric, what's his name? Oh God, I'm really terrible with names. I'm sorry. Who's it? Eric, the guy who was on CNN for a while, became a minister. Eric Erickson. Eric Erickson is the kind of guy who every 3 months tells you that Trump is total shit and is unchristian and whatever. And then he spends the next 3 months attacking everyone who attacks Trump, right? These guys have a set idea of how the world's going to be. And they see Trump as useful to get into that world. And in the same way that German conservatives who thought the Nazis were crass, weird, encouraged violence, all that kind of stuff, they still joined in supported the Nazis all the way until the end of World War II.
Yep.
Right? I mean, the first real attempt at killing Hitler by the old Prussian aristocracy didn't happen until 1944. So,
well, Trump is now still running for president. It needs to be mentioned. 100%. And I wish we could not talk about him. And I won't talk about him. I won't play him on the show. I try to limit it. But the question does remain that if he is the nominee, it matters a lot. But so many people are saying he can't win if he's a nominee. He already lost once, and things have only gotten worse. He's only lost support. And that seems to be the case in being made over and over. He's done. I have announced it. He's finished. He will not be the nominee. You've heard me say who the nominee will be. It'll be Mike Pompeo. And when it happens, I would like an award ceremony.
I'll I will send you a bag of edibles if that happens. You're going to need it.
I'll take it
if that happens.
So
for
sure,
I think that we have to assess Trump clearly, but take him very seriously, because remember, just like last time, a couple of really shitty bounces and he could win, right? So I think that I know a lot of Democrats who are ecstatic Trump's running because he's so beatable. But again, you could have bad luck. You know, things could intervene that could make it happen. So we have to attack Trump, go after Trump, make sure that people pay dearly for supporting Trump as much as we can until between now and the next cycle. And to be honest with you, you know, you want to have any chance of holding back on the Senate, we have to wrap Trump around the neck of every single Republican running.
Well,
if we want to make sure we take the House back, same thing. These guys have to be made to pay and pay and pay and pay until Trump is off the stage, because the only way this sort of fascist moment we're in ends is when the avatars of that philosophy are done politically completely, which means they have to lose, 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 and lose. And that's it. All the other talking about it. And, you know, this, by the way, subsumes for me, like, when the sort of Bernie people are like, the Democratic Party is not far enough to the left. I'm like, fuck off. First, beat the fascists. Number one thing. When the people on the right of the Democratic Party say to me, like, oh, you know, I don't think I can vote for this person in my district because they're like an AOC person. Fuck off. Rule number one, get the best people for every constituency and win and win and win and win. That's it. If all the, you know, fascism is a weird thing. It sort of smashes down ideology into anything that makes the ethno-nationalist group Amen feel like it's winning or helps it win. It'll do anything. It'll be nationalist. It'll be socialist. Coining a phrase there, right? It'll be for Social Security, be against Social Security. They don't care. It's all about having their in-group win.
Yes,
right?
Their in-group win, which is what authoritarianism is. The in-group is in charge.
Exactly.
And that is it. It is their America, which Nick Fuentes has described. I went down I watched a whole bunch of his stuff. I was pretty familiar with him already. I had seen his horrible rant after I got kicked out of CPAC, I believe. And I realized, you know, right away, of course, why he has a following and his weird, I don't want to say it's charisma, but it's certainly charismatic to certain type of brand of people.
Popat calls it, he says he appeals to the lotion fingered.
That's
brutal and perfect.
But listen, I don't want to shame anybody for using lotion. But let me ask you before I let you go about the latest in Ukraine. I haven't been paying attention to it too much over the last couple of weeks. I have read the headlines to some extent. I know that they are short. Apparently, maybe NATO is now short on weaponry because they gave it all to Ukraine or something like that. And I haven't. And I know the bombing has continued. Russian bombardment has continued, including in Kiev. What about the dynamics have changed?
So what's happened is that the Ukrainians have been winning, and they intelligently forced the Russians out of Kherson, out of Kharkiv, out of various other places, without having to launch any sort of incredibly costly offensive themselves. A guy that I know calls it fog-eating snow, meaning that it's just this strategy of corroding Russian ability. Russia's army operates on aviation, on artillery, and on logistics. All those missiles we gave the Ukrainians, those HIMARS and everything, just designed to degrade that stuff. If you look at Kharkiv and you look at Kherson, it was not some big, huge tank battle that won those. It's that the Russians just got so exhausted, they said, we either leave or the Ukrainians are going to capture all our men, right? It's a very, it's an interesting war because it's upending, you know, we think in terms of violence of action and big maneuvers and all that sort of thing. This is different. This is like World War I if one side had a really decisive strategic tactical advantage, where there's trench warfare and the Ukrainians just keep on chewing up Russians. And to the point where the Russians eventually are like, we can't keep providing bullets and bread to these guys. We got to pull them back. I think, and we're also, by the way, this all happened. The Ukrainians did these two major offensives, pushed them right up to the winter wet season, which we're in the middle of now. So you can go online and look for Ukraine, and you'll find videos of tanks being dug out of 3 feet of mud.
Yeah, guys
but
wearing.
The ground is about to start freezing again, and I would suspect that the Ukrainians really don't want the Russians to be able to settle in for the winter and reconstitute. So I think there's one more big offensive coming up sometime in the next 2 to 3 months that will attempt to split the Russian front in two. That would be my guess. And, the Ukrainians, everyone's running out of artillery because, again, the Western philosophy of fighting was enormously intense, enormous maneuver, have the war over in 3 months or 2 years at the most. This is more like a World War II war with like tons and tons of expenditure of ammunition and material and everything else. The Russians, so the Ukrainians are tight, but the Russians also can't keep it up either. And China's not going to bail them out. I'm not sure China could. And so I think we're in a phase that's going to seem quiet, but it's going to be a lot of Ukrainians continuing to corrode the Russian army. I think I told you last time we spoke, I'll be surprised if this war gets to the end of 2023.
I am just astonished by what coverage I have seen of it. By the way, what it's also going to be apparently is a very cold winter for anybody left living in Ukraine, where they have just it's always, you have an energy shortage. Obviously, they've been bombing the shit out of their energy infrastructure. About 40% of Ukraine's energy sector has been damaged or destroyed. Ukraine is facing an energy crisis after weeks of Russia pummeling its power facilities. But then you see these interviews with these guys who are fighting, who last year or just a little longer, last year, they were working in a shoe shop, or they were a lawyer, IT guys, all in military gear, saying, I would rather die. Freedom or death. Freedom or death. And I feel like that attitude, I know you've been paying close attention to it, but here at the end, could you just give me a sense of that kind of attitude that you're seeing from the men, especially, a lot of women too, who are fighting in Ukraine on the front?
Sure. So 22% of the Ukrainian army are women, actually.
Yeah.
I suspect it's higher than any army in the world, except for maybe the
Fascinating.
Israelis. The
times we are in.
Yeah, and I mean, women in combat. We're not talking, they're not driving trucks. They're in combat. I think that attitude, in part, is a couple of things. The first one is, obviously, Ukraine was attacked. And obviously, if Ukraine doesn't win, their entire way of life gets destroyed. This is what's so fucking stupid about being a Nazi Germany or being Putin's Russia. You don't give anyone any option but to fight you. And when you put people in that position, pretty much everybody's really good at fighting. There's no blandishment. There's no good side to this for them. So fuck it. You might as well fight, right? By the way, you're destroying our economy. I can't be that IT guy. I can't sell shoes. So fuck it. I might as well fight. So you just create a Spartan society that is all in against you, right? That's number one. So that's the morale number one. Number two is that the Ukrainians actually give a shit about their soldiers. And they have allies that are giving them materiel. For instance, the Ukrainians have an enormous amount of really incredibly good winter gear given to them by us, by the Brits, by the Finns, by the Norwegians, by the Swedes, by the Poles. Their guys are going into battle in polar tech and multiple layers. They're also not sitting. You see these guys in these trenches and they're covered in mud. It looks like shit, and it is, right?
Yeah, bad.
Those guys are being rotated in and out of those trenches every week or so. This is a thing that people don't understand about World War I, for instance. You spent 4 days in the trenches, 5 days in the trenches in a month in the winter in World War I. You are constantly rotating in and out. Because if you leave guys in trenches, they die of colds. They get so cold they can't react to you're a skier. You've been in a situation where you're so cold that you start to feel your cognition and your ability to respond to things.
It's just like combat.
Well, no. Imagine that feeling. Imagine that feeling. I know the upper New York was a combat zone in the skiing sense, but imagine that feeling where you're so cold that you can't function.
No, I get it. I mean, it's
and then you're getting attacked by guys with tanks.
It's tactically strategic to make sure you switch the guys out. So they're doing that in Ukraine,
and they're doing that, and so they feel taken care of. They've got a cause that is unimpeachable, and they know they're better trained, better armed, and have better tactics and better strategy,
and the incentive. They have more of an incentive than the Russians, who are like, what are we doing? They're sending us into this stupid war that we start. I mean, I'll give you
a great example of incentive. They are finding raped, murdered, tortured people in her sovereign.
That'll do it.
That is so common everywhere that the Russians controlled in Ukraine. It wasn't even fucking news in the United States. I had to look for it. And there's it's just as bad as Bucha. It's just as bad as Kharkiv. It's just as bad as all these places.
That'll turn just about anybody, potentially.
Right.
What could be an easier thing to turn someone violent towards you back?
I got to tell you, I know people in D.C. who don't pay any attention to anything, who are routinely giving money to the Ukrainians.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, well.
Yeah,
wow.
I know military guys in the U.S. who have gone over there to train people.
Yeah.
Who are way past the point where they should be doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, so Matt Gallagher is over there again.
Yep. It's a good example.
Yeah.
A good example.
All right, I got to run. You got to run. I really appreciate this. What another great conversation, Bill. Thank you so much.
And much as I want your Iranian team to keep on getting out there to tell the mullahs to go fuck themselves, go USA today in soccer.
Yeah, we did that interview just before the game went off, and I had so much fun watching that with over 20 of you ended up showing up and watching the game with us. Some of you didn't even know anything or care about soccer, just wanted to hang out, and it was fun. Some new faces as well. I hope to see you Thursday night at our hangout with Kenneth C. Davis. He's going to take questions. We'll give away a few of his copies of his new book. But thank you to Bill B. in D.C. Go say hello to him on Twitter. Thank him for joining us. Of course, Jason Johnson and everybody who is subscribing to today's show. I can't do it without you. Sign up for a paid subscription right now. And that is it. That is all. Tomorrow, Wajid Ali will join me. Who else? We will see. Some great guests coming up. Very excited to have on. Not confirmed, so I won't say, but always want to know who you'd like me to have on or have back on. Email me, standuppete@gmail.com, and I will talk to you tomorrow. John Carroll, take us away today.
Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eyes. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it than now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Oh, got to stand